To the royal fallout from that sex trafficking conviction of former Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Lawyers for Britain's Prince Andrew due in court next week as he battles a lawsuit brought by an Epstein accuser who is not part of the criminal case against Maxwell. ABC's James Longman is live from Buckingham Palace. Good morning, James.
Yeah, good morning, Janae. Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction has turned the spotlight on the rich and powerful men for whom young girls were trafficked. Prince Andrew has always denied any involvement, but attention is on him now and his hearing, which starts in just a few days. This morning, the aftershock from Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction felt far and wide. The 60-year-old found guilty of 5 federal charges.
I just feel so grateful that the jury believed us and sent a strong message that perpetrators of sexual abuse and exploitation will be held accountable no matter how much power and privilege that they have.
Attention now turning to Maxwell's friend, Prince Andrew, who stands accused of sexual abuse in a separate civil suit in New York. Virginia Giuffre, seen here in a picture with the Queen's son and Maxwell in the background, allegedly taken decades ago, accuses the royal of having sex with her on several occasions, starting with when she was just 17, a claim the Duke has always denied.
I've said consistently and frequently that we never had any sort of sexual contact.
A hearing for the case is set for Tuesday. The Prince's lawyers, however, are calling for the suit to be thrown out. Giuffre's lawyer, who is the same counsel for Annie Farmer, who testified in Maxwell's trial, had this to say following the Maxwell verdict.
What you've seen here is a jury who took it upon themselves to believe in these victims, hear their voices, and render a verdict that told the American public that regardless of power, privilege, whether you're a president or a prince, you will be held accountable if you engage in sexual trafficking.
The prince, who's 9th in line to the British throne, has long maintained his innocence, including in a now infamous 2019 BBC interview where he had this exchange regarding any possible interactions with his accuser.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time.
In the same interview, he distanced himself from Maxwell.
If there are questions that Ghislaine has to answer, that's her problem. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to comment one way or the other.
But he's never denied their friendship, saying she was his link to Epstein. The two seen in this photo shown during Maxwell's trial, which, according to the Telegraph, was taken at the Queen's Balmoral estate in Scotland. Well, Prince Andrew has had no comment on the Maxwell verdict. As for his own hearing, well, his lawyers want that thrown out altogether on the grounds that Giuffre is not a US resident. Janae?
And our thanks to James. And joining us now, ABC News royal contributor Robert Jobson and ABC News contributor Shauna Lloyd. Shauna, I want to start with you. This week, the Prince's lawyers challenged the federal court's jurisdiction. They're claiming that Giuffre isn't legally a resident of the U.S. What happens if she loses on that question?
If she loses on this question of jurisdiction, the case is actually dismissed, and which means it cannot go any further on this particular action in this particular court.
Okay, so what happens if she wins on this issue?
If she wins, we now move to the next phase of trial, which is going to be discovery. She is then able to get the information that they're going to request. There are going to be phone records, emails, other information that can be requested from her, who she is accusing.
Okay, Robert, I want to bring you in now. How big of a stain is this on the royal family's reputation?
Well, I think it's huge. I mean, it's done an awful lot of damage over the last decade. It's been drip, drip. But the reality is now the Maxwell case has concluded with a conviction. You know, he in the past has said that he was close to Ghislaine Maxwell. He described her as a friend. He tried to distance himself from Epstein by saying he was Ghislaine Maxwell's +1. But now you have that photograph, that infamous photograph, which has his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, next to him, and a convicted sex trafficker behind him in his friend Ghislaine Maxwell. So it's hugely damaging, and the newspapers over here are now beginning to stop this softly approach. And the Times of London, in an editorial this morning, has been very firm in saying that he really does need to face the music and the royal family should cut him adrift. But I really can't see how they can do that. You know, when he was born, he was second in line to the throne. How do you cut the son of the Queen adrift?
And Robert, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. The Times of London out with a very strongly worded editorial saying that the royal family essentially needs to cut him loose and let him face the American judicial system. What sense do you have of what the family is saying behind closed doors?
Well, I think the newspapers are beginning to turn against Prince Andrew. I think the feeling is over here is that he really has to face the music. At the moment, he is dealing with a civil case, and as has been described ahead of this, is that that case has basically been running with his lawyers trying to have it thrown out on technical reasons, that she's not a resident, and is the latest one. The fact is, though, that is not good enough in terms of clearing your reputation, and you have to actually face what these accusers are saying. These historic claims that have now led to a conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell are extremely serious. They're horrendous crimes, and I think it's no good Prince Andrew hiding behind his title, his money, his wealth, and the royal family. He has to face the music.
And Sean, I want to bring you back in. If this case does continue, would Andrew be required to come to the U.S. for discovery?
Yes, he will actually be required to come for discovery, depositions. There are a number of things that he would be required to come and participate in order to get this discovery process going and completed.
And to you, Robert, the Times of London, again, not mincing words, saying that Maxwell's conviction essentially renders impossible any notion of the Duke of York's return to public life. What do you think of that?
Absolutely right. I think that it's almost impossible for him to do that even now. It's the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War coming up, in which he played a heroic role as a helicopter pilot, and I know that he wanted to be part of those commemorations as well as the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. I'd see no way that he can be involved in that whilst this is hanging over him. It's a stain upon himself, and it's a stain upon the monarchy until his name is cleared. Even if the civil case goes in his favour, I still think that the damage has already been done to his reputation, and the royal family will want to keep him out of public life.
Robert and Shauna, thank you guys both so much for being with us this morning to weigh in.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.